finally got to watch the latest episode of The Legend of Korra, episode 3 of Book Air, called The Revelation, and it was a great episode. I think it's my favorite thus far. I think it has this great mix of moving the plot along, building up the characters, and giving backstory to Mako and Bolin, and really developing our villain Amon. So, in the beginning of the episode, we see Korra, Bolin, and Mako practicing to get ready for the big tournament in pro bending, but however, the owner of the entire pro bending tournament comes in, and he gives them the money that they've won, but he also takes out, for housing, what they owe him, all that kind of stuff, and they're left with nothing. And on top of all that, they have to give about 30,000 yuans, I think they said, to participate in the tournament, or they get kicked out. And so, since they don't have any money because Bolin and Mako are both orphans, and Korra doesn't have any money because she's always had people take care of her because she's the Avatar, they're kind of out of luck. So Bolin tries to go out and make some money, but something goes awry, and it's up to Mako and Korra to find him. And what I liked about this episode is that despite the shippiness of it, it really does develop the relationship between Korra and Mako, and also delve into a relationship between Mako and Bolin. You find out that their parents, Mako's parents, were killed by a firebender when he was 8. So basically he's like Batman, but his parents got killed, and so he's very protective of Bolin. And I love how they play out the two characters as brothers, how they show how, despite the fact that Mako seems like the stock and Bolin's the funny guy, how they really come out well together and they work well together as brothers. I feel like in the show, and the writers always tell us that, you can be, that being a bender wasn't dependent on your parents. You could be a firebender and have a child that wasn't a firebender, or have a child that was an earthbender, because it's a spiritual thing, not a hereditary thing. But you never really get to see that in The Last Airbender because, Fire Nation firebenders, Earth Kingdom earthbenders, Water Tribe waterbenders. So now in the Republic City and the Legend of Korra, we finally get to see that kind of integration. We also get a family where you have one brother's an earthbender, one's a firebender. And that's really interesting because it shows just how mixed this world was and how the war really separated them all to begin with. And also because now we have cities bringing people closer together, you get that mix of people, which makes it all seem more real. Everything that's been advanced so far in terms of technology has done so at a realistic rate, especially if you look at any kind of history of industrial revolutions. It makes sense that it would happen to this degree and how they have certain things working together, because like we saw in the first season of The Legend of Aang, we already saw they were beginning with the drill and building stuff like that, so it makes a natural progression that it would be to this degree at this point. I really love the chase sequence in the story between Amon's chi-blocking soldiers and Korra and Mako, because you saw them you saw the flaws in how they fight, because Korra, it reminded me of the episode of The Chase, where you have Katara and Sokka fighting against Ty Lee and May, and not really knowing how to fight them. And I feel like it was coming up again because they're so used to fighting with their bending and other benders, and Korra probably has never met a chi blocker before, so you have, she's kind of out of her element, doesn't really know how to fight, doesn't know what to do without her bending. And so that was really interesting, and it was a really good throwback to that. And it makes sense that his warriors would have chi blocking abilities. And then we get to Amon at the big rally where the revelation comes, and he tells everyone that the spirit world has given him the ability to take bending away from benders permanently. And it's not energy bending, at least I don't believe so. There's no bending involved. It's more like touching two pressure points. And we don't know yet for sure if it really is permanent because we just see him do it and the bending go away. But that doesn't really prove that it's long lasting. But we do see this happening of him intimidating and getting rid of these mob lords that run the town by taking their bending away. And one of the benders he has on the stage is Bolin, and so Mako and Korra had to stage a big distraction to kind of get him out the way, so they take the steam and try to cloud it up so they can fog up the stage and then remove Bolin. And Amon lets them escape because he knows that they'll be perfect to let the world know what he's planning now, because that's what he plans to do for all benders. And I have to say, a few people have a problem with the whole anti-bending storyline, but I actually think this is probably one of the most logical things they could ever do in this world. To me, this story makes perfect sense. I can totally understand why Amon and his sheep blockers and all those Equalists exist. Because, yes, we watch the show and we root for Korra and the protagonist and all that kind of stuff, and they're all benders, so yeah, we're pro-bender. In the world of Avatar, who are not benders would be kind of frightened by benders, especially when you see from the crime lords that a lot of people who run the mobs do have these powers. Because if you do have these powers over people and you have an advantage, why wouldn't you use it in certain ways? Especially in a time of peace where there's not a war and you have to fight against each other in that way, you redirect it into something else. And so this to me makes perfect sense. So I understand why they feel this way. And what I thought was interesting was that in the scene where Korra is intimidating the Equalist guy who's in the park, all I could think when I was watching that scene was that she's pretty much proving his point, because she's using her bending and her natural talents to overpower him because he can't fight back that way. And by doing that, all she does is prove the Equalist points, that because benders have this power, they have an advantage over the regular people, and it can be used to harm them. And you know, we saw with even Mako that benders have been attacking people and hurting people in some situations, and Amon, in his backstory, has a similar altercation where he says that he and his family were from the farm and none of them were benders, and then one day a firebender came and he was extorting money from their family, and when Amon's father came to try and confront him, the firebender killed his family and he completely scarred up his face, which I think is an interesting callback to Ozai and Zuko and stuff like that. But even if that story is fake, and it very well could be, it still ties down to the essential fear that these people must go through, is that these people have powers that we don't completely understand. They're different. They frighten us. It's just like, you know, with the X-Men and mutants. People are afraid of what they don't understand and what's more powerful than them. And also, since they're moving forward in technology, I can see them viewing bending as obsolete, because if you have all this technology and you don't need benders anymore, essentially don't need them anymore, why should they hold these high rank in society? And what are they going to do with their power? And so this conflict between benders and non-benders to me is fascinating. I think it's a great way of talking about the privilege of bending and how it plays a role into the society that they live in, especially now in a society where they just got out of a huge war that was started by mainly benders. I mean, for the Earth Kingdom, they were almost wiped at the planet by firebenders, by bending. If bending doesn't exist, that would never be a threat to them at this point. So that is a great storyline to me. I'm really glad that they're touching on it. I think it's really fun, and I'm really looking forward to how it's going to play out. Mako and Korra, I really like them as what they're doing with them so far. You can tell they're going to be made into a couple. I think it's really interesting how they play off each other, because Korra is like not a shrinking violet, neither is Mako, and they both kind of like butt heads, and that's really fun for me to watch, and it plays off each other. And I feel like even when it's not romantic, it's also when it's a friendship thing, it also works well because they have that banter and it plays off each other so well. My thing is that even though I like it, I also wish that they had waited longer to really deal with it. I mean, I know it's like she's 16, she's at that age, and it makes sense because she probably wasn't around that many guys like Mako back in the Southern Water Tribe that she'd be interested in them now. However, I just feel like, you know, when we had Aang, he was a boy. He had a love interest, Katara. We all knew it was going to happen. But they waited a while to really bring that whole shipping thing in. I mean, there were hints of it, but they were small. Whereas here, it's pretty much kind of like, see it? See the affection? Ship, 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 ship. And I just kind of wish that they would tone that down a little bit, because after Young Justice and seeing that with every single female character, I just wish they would realize that just because you're a girl does not mean automatically that you're going to latch onto the first guy you see and be like, oh my god, I love him, it's so great. Even though they're not exactly doing that with Korra, I just wish that they would just pull back a little bit, because since Mako's been introduced, since Mako's been introduced, it's pretty much been hinted like, there you go. Love, 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 love. Just pull it back a little bit, because, you know, the thing about Katara and Aang, even though I didn't like Kat Aang, was that it was subtle and it was slow, and you can see them as friends first and then a relationship afterwards. Where with this, it's pretty much like they're comrades, but it's really, they're more pushing the love aspect more than anything else, and I don't feel, and I feel like while I like it and I think the couple is cute, I wish they would just pull back and not be so concerned with that. But it looks great. I am loving this show so far. I love the political aspects of it. I love just the storylines, and hopefully the spirit role will start coming in and playing an even bigger role. So I'm loving it.